I think enablement has two really big jobs. One is to remove obstacles, and two is to build confidence. And when you can build confidence in people, they can do anything. Let's stop beating our heads up against the wall and praying for more data hygiene and instead empower tools to do that and let our sellers do what they really do well. I've had CROs say, like, if we have enablement, why do we need to hire a medic trainer? And I'm like, you have a gym membership, why do you need to hire a personal trainer? Like, let's think about it for a minute. Not everybody's good at everything.
Enablement, as a profession is often overlooked. And look, you only get noticed typically when things go wrong. What can we do to make sure that the impact of our work is seen and valued? Gail, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, Michael. Thanks for having me.
I love that smile. It's so good to have you here. I'm extremely excited about, the topic we are going to cover because it's all about enablement. How to truly show our value when everything is a little bit, unreal almost, with AI taking over. So really excited having you on. Before we get us, started and talk about some of this good stuff, we want to get to know you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you're working on these days, what Gail is all about. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I love talking about enablement, obviously my huge passion. I fell into enablement like most people did. I was a seller and then I was a sales leader. And I loved leading sales teams. I did it for about 9 years. But ultimately, I found this dichotomy of trying to win the deals, but also coach the people at the same time. And it was really hard. And I knew in my heart that if I coached the people, we would win more deals. But at the same time, I couldn't let any deals slip. And so that push pull was really hard. And eventually, that's how I fell into enablement, is that I loved the empowering element of the people. I think enablement has two really big jobs. One is to remove obstacles, and two is to build confidence. And when you can build confidence in people, they can do anything. And so that's why I love it. That's why I get to talk about it on the regular. I was deeply involved with the Revenue Enablement Society and president up until last year, and got a chance to travel around the country and talk to enablement folks at all different levels, people just coming into the space, people that have been doing it a long time. And consistently learn and grow from the expertise of this community.
I love that. Look, we had a lot of topics. We brainstormed a lot of ideas, and you picked a topic that is really close to home. And I'm really curious, why do you care so much?
Because when enablement is done right, it is a force multiplier for the business, for leadership, and for the people. It is the underpinning of everything that is successful about a business's opportunity to grow. And businesses are, they can stay stagnant. They can continue doing what they've always done, and they can get what they've always gotten. But ultimately, if you want to empower your team, if you want to power up that revenue engine, you have to have enablement. And because of the role I've had, I've gotten to know a lot of the enablement people. It is a small but mighty community. It is a community of people that are driven, that are so caring. I mean, this is enablement professionals at their core, just desperately want to see their teams be successful. And I want to see that work rewarded with more enablement people in the space, with more enablement people being promoted, and ultimately with more enablement people keeping their jobs. We've seen 2 years of massive upheaval in the space, and it's eroding trust and confidence. It's exhausting. It's hurting people. And we need to be able to do better as a community and have our teams that we work with, our leaders, our RevOps leaders, our sales leaders, more deeply understand enablement so that we can win together.
I really love this. Like, if the enablement community is not supporting, enablers, and we are not together, I guess, everybody's turning irrelevant at some point in time. So let's talk about that right now. Again, AI is a hype. Everybody's leveraging. It's a transformation. We know how powerful it can get. Some people have really a strong opinion on LinkedIn. Hey, enablement is done. Right now, you can do so many things with AI. It will replace enablement. It's obvious that I have different opinion. But I want to hear your perspective. What's really changed since 2 years ago? Because yes, with COVID and remote and all the layoffs and everything happened, it's been continuous for sure,
Yeah.
and enablement is getting impacted. How do you see today compared to what we've seen recently?
So I think we need to go back in our little time machine and understand that enablement is still a relatively new profession. And it's only been in the last 8 to 10 years that we're really seeing a consistent rise in enablement. So before COVID, we saw this nice, steady line going up on the chart of people on LinkedIn who had revenue enablement or sales enablement in their titles. It was very
Hmm.
healthy. The business, the opportunities were growing organically. Companies were discovering, like, hey, this is working. This is sticky. Let's have two people instead of one. Let's buy this
Hmm.
tool. It was a very healthy growth curve. And then COVID happened and the industry went crazy. Like we saw the number of job titles go from like 12,000 to 18,000 in less than a year because businesses didn't know how to respond to COVID. And so they threw
Hmm.
bodies at the problem,
Yeah.
which is very common in tech, right? What do? We throw
Hmm.
bodies at it. And we got through it. But what happened is really twofold. One is that the departments were so big and so bloated that the businesses came back and said, where's the ROI? Well, you can't
Hmm.
show ROI and enablement when you've taken a team of two and made it a team of 10 that fast,
Hmm.
right? It's not a healthy growth curve. And we had a number of people who got into enablement who really weren't trained. They didn't know what they were doing. And we had businesses that thought add water, magic happens. And enablement
Hmm.
is time and it's commitment and it's iterative. And so, because of that, we saw a real crash about 2 years ago of companies saying, this isn't working. We're spending all this money. We're not seeing our ROI. We're just going to jettison everything. And so
Hmm.
companies have gone from having a team of now 10 to a team of one or zero and just said, meh, stick it back on the managers. And so, my hope is over the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to find a better stasis point where we'll get back to a healthy growth curve. We'll get back to a commitment for the professionals in the space to really be valued and allow them to be strategic. And I think AI is going to be a huge part of that. And I
Hmm.
have to laugh, Michael, when you say, how people on the internet say, enablement is dead, because I worked in trade shows for a very long time in my career. And when the internet first exploded, people said to me, like, oh, are trade shows dead? Nobody's going to go to a trade show. They can buy all this stuff online. And I just laughed. I just laughed. And I'm like, they could have bought it on a product catalog, the Sears catalog, from starting from 1950. They want to go to trade shows so they can touch it and feel it and talk to people. And exactly that happened. What we saw in trade shows was instead of sending 10 buyers, they would send 8 or 5, but they were more qualified. They were more buyer
Hmm.
ready. And so I think what enablement will benefit from an AI perspective is more actionable data, right? How many enablers in this audience listening to this are going starving for data? But more importantly, we'll be able to take data and have better insights. So right now we can use call intelligence to track calls, but it's still nascent to do it at scale, to listen for sentiment at scale, to
Hmm.
provide just in time information at scale in the flow of work on the call, to be able to have information, to our sellers in their hand. If a caller says, um, I'm looking at this competitor, right? To have that information there. And we also have sellers who aren't quite ready to start leveraging this in real time. And so we're
Hmm.
going to see this kind of marrying of the tech that's already there plus the tech that's quickly coming up behind. And the resistance of people start to wane as these tools become not a nice to have, but a need to have, a need for you to be successful as a seller. You've got to be able to use those tools.
I really love the breakdown. And I think to your point, AI has a massive impact on enablement. Like we are providing an enablement solution ourselves, and we see, the difference right now. To your point, before data hygiene was an issue, still is an issue, but it's getting much, much better very, very quickly. And then you mentioned about insights. Yes, we all bought, the legacy products because we knew that was the standard as part of our tool stack. We needed this, and that. But we realized, okay, with call recording tools, who's actually watching those? Do we get actual insights that we can apply in the flow of work for our sellers to even be able to see the impact before measuring anything? So I guess this is an opportunity actually for enablers to really shine if they are AI enabled, because let's look at all these organizations. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a very nice CRO, and he said, we rolled out ChatGPT. Nothing crazy, right? It's publicly accessible. Everybody's using it. And guess what? I said, guess what? He said, our adoption was single digit. And we were talking about a post IPO company.
Wow.
And I was like, what was the reason? I want to hear from you, sir, because you've been on the seat for a long time. We didn't enable them correctly. That was the answer. Do you have an enablement? Yes. So how did we go about it? I don't want to go in that example and break it down. Point being, someone needs to actually own enablement to enable people, meaning that, hey, what is AI? You'll be shocked that so many people, so many even younger people, they're not leveraging AI the way they're supposed to. And who's better than enablement? Who's patient, have access to insights and data, and can communicate as of why we need to change. I don't know anyone better than an enablement person. So
I agree. And I hope that enablement teams really are taking up that charge, because one of the things I love about enablement is that we allow our teams to be vulnerable. Yeah, we allow our sellers to come in and say, listen, Gail, I'm not getting this. I'm not nailing this. Help me out here. And it should feel the same for AI, whether you're a digital native or you're late to the party or whatever it is. I think enablement has to show what good looks like. It has to champion the adoption. We need to have that echoed by our sales leaders. We need to show, like, hey, here's a QBR deck that was enabled, not written by AI, but enabled. Here's all the call intelligence that we've used to come up with, hey, the most common objection we're seeing right now isn't price. It's almost never
mhm.
price, right? It's always something underlying that. And now we can use this information at scale to come back and say, hey, here's what we're hearing. Let's enable you to hear that and then hear what good looks like in solving those problems. It really is a lot of connecting the dots, whether it's AI or any other part of enablement, and empowering folks to be able to like feel comfortable getting there.
I love that. And I just wanted to add something real quick. And this is, our observation. Being, 4 years in the market, initially it was IT teams and RevOps people started, the investigation about this new tools. What is this AI tool doing? This, and that. Right now, I see more enablers actually owning the initiative, which is really, really interesting for me. And I love seeing this. They come in, they sometimes they don't have all the data we need, but they are willing to actually take charge, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. So, like, I know the impact of this because I've done my research, because, again, data is more available. I want to champion this product internally. This is how I mapped it out so far. What do you think? And I love this because it was not the case until, I would say, about a year and a half ago. Like, previously, we always got IT people, even RevOps people, coming and poking around.
It makes perfect sense because for an enablement, we are getting push from above, right? Our leaders saying, be more efficient, do this. But we're also getting pulled from below. And that's reps who have
Yeah.
come from an organization that was AI fluent or that had a tool in their tool set that they didn't have here. And I've always encouraged our ICs to say, hey, if you've done something in another org that works well, if you had a tool, if you had a way of working, let's hear it, especially in the startup world, because the companies, we have to move so fast, and legacy processes that worked even 6 months ago may not always work the same way. And so,
Mhm.
again, creating that space, enablement, creating that space where people can be vulnerable, come with ideas, say, have we thought about this? That's awesome. And the fact that we're seeing that driving into enablement is where it should be, because we are the closest to the field. We are responsible for the people's skills. And
Mhm.
so as we're seeing those opportunities and bringing them forward, we can also see, like, how do we measure that impact and make sure it's something that we can get high adoption
I
on.
love this. Look, today you shared something on LinkedIn. It was a frog. That for sure I can't remember. That was catchy. It's just it reminded me of those like old consoles. Like,
It
I
was.
don't know
It
if
was
you're,
a shot from our old Frogger game. Yes.
yeah. And like the message was really clear that, look, enablement, it's not a straight line, right? It's a step by step journey. Of course, we can take this in so many different directions, but you gave a very practical, important example. Sometimes you have the answer living inside your organization. someone used something before, someone is actually using something that nobody's aware because everything is so accessible. How can we actually, build this step-by-step journey today that everybody's hungry for more AI, more enablement, more tools, starting with within, and before even we go out and start exploring the world with millions of solutions out there?
It's a great question. I'll actually go back to that post. So, what I was talking about in the post was tracking inline metrics, kind of like the Frogger game, right? Like it's really hard for enablement to track lagging metrics. Depending on your sales cycle, it might be 2 weeks, it might be 12 months. And so
Mhm.
we need to have leading indicators that get us there. So, for example, if we're launching a new product, we're going to look at confidence scores from our sellers outside the training. How confident are they training on, selling this product? We know sellers are never going to sell something they're not comfortable with. So a confidence score, while it doesn't equate to money, absolutely is a great leading indicator. And then our second metric in that inline can be call intelligence scores, right? Are they pitching it? Are they pitching the new product? Then our
Mhm.
third indicator is it showing up in proposals? So how often is that SKU pitched? And then our fourth indicator is our true lagging, is the revenue associated with that new SKU. So we could
Mhm.
take the same methodology for any enablement project. If we're talking about AI, right? Let's look at what are those metrics that we know and what is our goal. So for the CEO you were talking about, what did he want to have happen? Right? Was he looking to get 30% of his team, 40% of his team using it? And for what reasons? Right? And so same thing, we define those and we say, okay, we want them using it for all of their call prep. This is going to save 4 to 6 hours a week, depending on how many calls they have. AI call prep. We want to maybe we'll build a bot for them. Maybe we could do that. We're pretty savvy.
Okay.
That'll prepare them for that call, right? And so our first indicator is confidence out of training. Do you know how to use the bot to prepare for your call? The second is, hey, how many people are really using that bot? How can we see how many calls are being prepped for in a given week? Now we can look in our third metric is maybe call velocity. Are we getting faster from call one to call two? We should, if we're better prepared, see a
Mhm.
velocity uptick. Now, that's not a metric that would be true in every business, but in some businesses, that
Mhm.
would be an output of best prep. And then ultimately, are we seeing a higher conversion rate? Are we winning more business because we're better prepared? Those are the type of metrics we could show in line and then come back to your friend, the CEO, and say, okay, is this what you want to accomplish? Yes. Awesome. Our goal down the line is to get 80% people. Okay, cool. 80% of people is going to equate to what from a revenue number? And it's, again, it's always an estimate, but it's a goal. We
Mhm.
want to put a stick in the ground and say, we're looking for a 10% uptick in revenue based on better preparation. Anything like that, like those froggers, we can do that hopping through traffic and get to the other side and prove the value of the work that enablement is doing.
Fantastic breakdown. Because you didn't start by saying, hey, let's just look at the numbers that we need to improve. Yes, maybe SQLs need a push. Let's start with where we are today.
Yeah.
First and foremost, let's just assess, even if people pay attention. Yes, the change hopefully is communicated clearly from the top. We have alignment with the leadership, again, with frontline leaders, and we build a champion internally. So we did all the steps, assuming. Then let's start with what is actually reasonable and rational to do.
Yeah.
Do they even pay attention to this? How they are using it? What can we measure? You mentioned about the velocity for sure. Yes, if it's enterprise, it takes longer, but we can track conversation right now. Did they at least, get more context involved? Are they even multi-threading from the get-go? Do we have any sort of next steps? Because sometimes again we'll get surprised. We look at actually we put the hood up and say, oh my god,
Yeah.
this is in the opportunity
Well,
section.
yeah.
How?
And this is where I think AI is going to give us even more insight, right? Like as we empower AI to look at a typical deal, in all of the deal stages, what moves a deal forward, what slows it down, then we can start to look at it rise. One of the
Mhm.
things is that's hard right now is most of our tools and most of our people focus on a deal and then the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. I don't want to look at a deal. I want to look at the story that all of the deals are telling us. The idea of deeper buyer intelligence, the idea of better understanding of handling objections. The idea that maybe our ICPs and our personas are not 100% right, that's what this data can really tell us. And it's going to be able to tell us like where the internal friction points are that we can also help avoid. Like you mentioned, data hygiene earlier, right? This is a fight we are never going to win. We're just never going to win it. I was a seller for a long time. I sucked at it too. I didn't see the value. It was all in my head, right? Great. Let's stop beating our heads up against the wall and praying for more data hygiene and instead empower tools to do that and let our sellers do what they really do well, which is get in the room, dig, map pain to solutions, like all of that that's of high value. If we can really use AI to start taking time and better allocating it for our sellers, wow, now we've made a really great investment. And those RevOps tools, the enablement tools in AI, they're already starting to show great returns on that. And we're really in the nascent stages.
I really like this because it tells me this simple but powerful. Use the data you have. Don't like it's good to plan to try to make things better and hygienic, if you will. But at the end of the day, even if we automate everything on the CRM or we have multiple even data source, it's never going to be perfect. But we can aim to making it better. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails? These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only, revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai. Now, let me ask you something about building that, again, relationship with your sellers. So you said, let's give our sellers what they need today. Okay. The real case scenario. CRO came in. We don't have a sales methodology to follow. Everybody's doing different thing. We are growing right now. We want to mature up. We want to act like adults. Let's roll out command and message. I don't know, medic, medpic, well, you name it. So we spent $1 million. Enablement take the order. It already happened, and they said, "Hey, you have your tool stack, you have your team. Go figure it out." Now, the challenges were multiple folds, right? You cannot straight up and come and say, "Mr. CRO, we cannot do this." Hey, sorry, investment is done. We're gonna roll this out, and this is a real case, by the way, multiple times. Your sellers are selling, they're already struggling. To your point, maybe we don't even know if the ICP is sharp enough. Now, marketing and messaging doesn't stay. So enablement should come and align everyone based on a rollout that is not necessarily that solid. How should we navigate this as someone in the seat? How can we strategically say, "Hey, I took the order already because it's there," but I still don't want to just roll with it because I know I'm going to fail.
It's a great question. And I think this happens more often than we'd like to hear, where the decision has been made upstairs and downstairs really needs to, cook and serve the dinner. And I think in those cases, we have to be able to figure out where our bookend is in that process. So what do we have to do first and what do we have to do last? And the first is the same process that I would take whether or not the CRO already bought command of the message. I'd be like, cool, but I'm still going to do my pre-work, which is a deep discovery of how are the sellers selling? Why do we need a methodology? Why do we need one now? Why now is always my bigger question. Like, I'm going to agree you need it, but why now? Because it's going to slow down your business and it's going to, kill your quota for a quarter. Like, are you prepared for all that? And then do the discovery that says, what does this program need to do in order to meet the way we sell? And then be able to sit down with command of the message and say, okay, here's what you need to know about how we work. Here's what we need to know about how you work so we can prepare our teams and so we can build out an engine that's scalable and repeatable so this training isn't a one-time thing, right? And so we have the training, it's great. whatever it is, it's great. And then we, as enablement, we need to then build it into our systems. So if it's medic, we need to build up medic deal reviews. We need to do medic spotlights. We need to do medic case studies that we're showing at every sales meeting. Like we have to echo this over and like the drumbeat over and over so that medic is deep in the system. Because learning what the alphabet means respectfully is the easy part. Learning
Hmm.
how you apply it to that business, your exact business, that's where enablement comes in and builds the bridge. And I've been asked this a lot because I've had CROs say, like, if we have enablement, why do we need to hire a medic trainer? And I'm like, you have a gym membership. Why do you need to hire a personal trainer? Like, let's think about it for a minute. Not everybody's good at everything. The outside
Hmm.
trainer brings a different perspective. We
Yeah.
still, as enablement, have a role to play in carrying that forward and making sure that our teams, continue to use it correctly. And so in that case, I think whether it's, whether I've done my investigation and I come back to the CEO and say, hey, command of the message isn't the right fit and fight for it. Or if I just say, okay, great, we're going to do command of the message, but I'm going to make sure we do it in a way that fits the research and setup that I've done so that I know on the backside it'll be successful.
Mm. I really, really like this. So, like, funny enough, many people actually said, you know what, I start testing it with a smaller, team and see how it goes. But you started with discovery. Let's just, okay, Mrs. Sarah, you made that decision. Let's have a conversation. I just want to understand your vision,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it's about your pipeline. So let's just understand, what's going on there. And then you had a point about, like, yes, maybe this methodology, maybe this little tool, maybe that person as a trainer, maybe they did phenomenal work outside of our organization. What do we need today, right now, and make this such an urgent, again, request from you? And how we are going to implement this is based on how our sellers are actually doing, what sort of culture we have. We are a different organization from someone else. Even if you go for sub verticals and we are competing with us and they did it, you are a different setup.
Yeah.
You're not identical. And that's the reality check that I think enablement can strategically bring on the table. I give you a reality check because sometimes these rollers are not with bad intention. It's out of frustration. It's out of, again, hype. Sometimes even leaders get hyped and say, hey, this is the time to change. I know this is the right decision. It's better just to do it and roll with it. Okay, sure. But maybe your timing is off. Maybe we need a consultant who did, medic, rollouts with high, adoption for many, many years, and you let your enablement be focused on, you know making it continuous, to your point, training, touch points, coaching, so that actually sticks. I really like that.
There's never a good time. There just isn't. And so I think there are very often times where our leaders have to be brave, or we have to be brave and say, listen, I know it's going to be hard, but if we don't do it now, even though we're in a crazy growth curve or we're here, we don't do it now, we're going to pay for it tenfold on the next growth curve. And so, I typically have enough respect for my leadership to say, okay, if you see this as something that's mission urgent and you're putting the money in, great, let's do it. I'm not going to fight back for the sake of fighting and say, well, I didn't make the decision, therefore it can't happen.
Mhm.
But I am going to say, like, okay, we still have to own the outcome. So we have to do the setup. We have to do the follow through. We have to be that conduit when it comes to the program.
Again, you're being a great enabler, supporting, enabling across the board. But we know enablement, as a profession is often overlooked. Like, this is not something new to any of us. And look, you only get noticed typically when things, go wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to see, what can we do to make sure that the impact of our work is seen and valued? Because that example alone, so you just imagine you're in that situation, you're navigating a very complex, challenge right there. How can we actually make sure that people notice that we actually did it?
That's such a great question. For years in enablement, we've been talking about having a seat at the table. And I kind of bristle at that because I think if you're showing up with the right value, you're going to have a seat at the table. You're going to have a seat whether you want to or not. And so before we start pushing for or asking for that seat at the table, ask yourself, what are you bringing to the table? Right. And so, for example, if your company is doing WBRs or MBRs or QBRs, you darn well better have an enablement slide or section in there. And if there isn't one for you, stand up and say, I want a slide. I want to put my metrics in next to the sales metrics. And then you better show up with some good numbers, or you better show up with a story, right? So my slides tend to have some key metrics with an explanation of the program that's supporting that metric so that people understand, yes, I might be repeating a metric that is in a sales, but I'm repeating it using, number one, my inline metrics, which are not always the same metrics, but I'm also showing it with the impact that we're looking to drive. And so when enablement does that, all of a sudden there's a lot easier time for people to associate the work we're doing with the outcomes we're driving. We've complained for a long time that, we're it's hard to get buy-in. This is a way to get buy-in, right? Just
Hmm.
show up, bring the receipts, and prove it on a regular basis. And every time you're doing something, prove it, bring the receipts, and you will start to build that agency within your business.
Look, being proactive, I think, is extremely important to your point. You build your own way to get noticed. Now, I want to ask a follow-up question on this, though, because sometimes, yes, you're not noticed, you're not celebrated, and you try once or twice, and people will recognize it. A good leader will pick that up. It's not that they're going to ignore it, they ask you for more. But sometimes we see, again, is one rejection after one rejection after one rejection, and it's really the culture problem. We
Yeah.
don't have that culture that enablement can stay and grow. But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people that I dearly love. I think you mentioned this to me, if I'm not mistaken. They do job hugging, so they stick around, their current job, because,
Hugging.
and especially, look, when the market is, not that clear, and we we are not flourishing as enablers. Can you explain, the idea of, as of, again, why people are doing this? It's very obvious, market is bad, but what's behind this, and how can we actually change this narrative?
Yeah, job hugging is a term I heard actually fairly recently, and it's pretty much this idea that it's not the right job. You know, it's not the right job, but you're going to hold on to it because the market is that bad, and it is legitimately that bad. And so I think that there are two things that you can do. Um, what you can't do is change a company's culture. We don't have that power. That's just not something we can do. But we can change what's in our bubble. So I've talked a lot about bubbles this year, and our bubble is ourselves. That's the only thing you can change is you, how you feel
Mhm.
about it, how it impacts you. And then your bubble is your sphere of influence. So if you can't change the culture, what can you change? Can you change your team? Can you change how you interact with your sales leaders? Can you change how you interact with the ICs? Like, can you go down a level? Maybe you can't change what's happening up here, but you can get great job satisfaction working on the ground with the sellers. Can you have a value prop that does that while the market is still crazy and you're not wanting to move away? How can you make this job that you're holding on to give you the personal return, and at the same time, you're adding value to the business? I think that there are ways that you can make a job that isn't the right job, the right now job. And at the same time, start looking at how do you prepare yourself for the next job? How are you taking your personal time and saying, what am I learning? Who am I connecting with? What kind of network am I building? If you're not preparing yourself for whatever that next step is, and maybe it's not a next job, maybe you get
Mhm.
promoted in the same job and all of a sudden things change. Maybe the boss gets fired, which happens all the
Mhm.
time, and all of a
Yep.
sudden you get a new leader and the world is completely different. And it's a good thing you stayed. So you have to control only what you can control. And I think if we do that and we focus on that, we are more prepared when the market starts to recover. One thing I've been doing because I'm a little frustrated with the world is I've been doing resume reviews for folks in the community. Listen, I'm not a career coach, I'm not a resume writer, but I've hired a lot of enablement folks over the years.
Yep.
And so I've said, listen, if you want a resume review, send me your resume and I'll go through it. And I've had a lot of conversations with people that are job hunting. I'm able to connect them to jobs that I get recruited for. But also just help build their confidence, just like we have to build it for
Mhm.
other people. Enablers are terrible at touting, blowing our own horn, touting our own success. We suck at it. We're a cheerleader for everybody else. And so for me, building up this community right now has been a huge part of making sure that we succeed and thrive through these challenging times.
And I really love what you're doing, and I appreciate you actually helping others. you you said something that resonated a lot, and I really really love this. So seeing positive in every negative, having that growth mindset, that look, what can I get out of this work? Because not everything about it is negative. If you go even very macro and talk about maybe one rep that you're changing, their perspective about how they do and they gain confidence, that should give you that, self-satisfaction. So you don't suffer, for the time being you are with the company. And to your point, everything is changing really quickly.
Yeah,
Job market is bad for enablers, but look at the tenure of a CRO in the company, which is very short, 12 to 18 months.
I know,
So
like
things could happen. And I think, to your point, if you cannot get that recognition or support from the top, but everyone in the team on the front line appreciate you and respect you, this is beyond just the, hey, I'm satisfied with who I am or what I do. You have opportunities because there are other voices that you can actually send up and say, hey, all these folks, these are their reviews. This is what they get. This is the change I made. Whether you recognize or not, there's a CEO in the company at the end of the day.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I had an enabler come to me a couple months ago and was like, "Yeah, I'm really bored. They won't let me do anything. We're going through all these transitions. We're getting set up to be sold. Like, they won't let me do anything. I'm in a holding pattern." And I'm like, "Okay, let's brainstorm 10 things you can do. Like, what if you did some sales coaching? Like, oh, will they let me?" I'm like, "I don't know. Go ask. Can you do ride-alongs with sellers? Can you do call reviews? Can you go through
Mhm.
the SDR onboarding program and learn the SDR role more deeply? By the way, you're going through a merger. What's going to make you more valuable to the company?" Right. And so if you're, and that's, it happens, right? There are times companies are just in a weird space and we are sometimes put on the back burner. You have to be able to create your own opportunities, whether it's in the company you're in the community you're in the, learning about new technologies in the space, anything that you can do that continues to build your insights and ideas are what's going to make you um, not just more marketable for a future job, but just happier. You have so much more job satisfaction and personal satisfaction when you feel like your efforts are being rewarded.
I absolutely agree with you because even like it shows in your conversations. Just imagine you're at a place and you're job hunting or having conversations with people. People can sense that desperation or confidence.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
that is not something that you can fake. Maybe some people can do it, good for them. But typically, again, if we're talking about, tech space, good companies, growing, again, organizations, people have EQ. People can pick, things up. And why not actually practicing only that? Enablement is about changing, behavior and adding confidence to our sellers. Why not starting even with ourselves if nobody's watching or nobody's paying attention to?
yeah, yeah. We're always watching. We have to watch ourselves, right? We have to look out for ourselves. So let's do that. And luckily, this is a community that's here for that. Like, this is a
Mhm.
community that is here for great ideas, for volunteer opportunities, for opportunities to continue to learn and grow. If you're getting stuck and you're like, I don't know what to do next, reach
Mhm.
out to this community, reach out to people and say, hey, I'm getting stuck or I'm getting stymied or I'm feeling like I need a lift or some ideas. This is a community that will absolutely show up for you. And that's amazing.
So let's talk about this because there are a lot of people new in enablement seat. They're sales leaders, former sales leaders. They love enablement. They jump right in. And I actually met one and make sure that we introduce you guys after this. Great guy. When you say community, is there particular places that you would suggest people new again in enablement, or people who are struggling or just want to expand their network to look into?
Yeah, I would highly recommend they join RES, the Revenue Enablement Society. There are chapters in a lot of the big cities with meetups, and there are virtual meetings as well. Great place to start. There is a paid community, which is Sales Enablement Collective, which also does regional meetings. And there's a totally free community called the Enablement Squad, which has a great Slack channel and again, more meetups. And just in LinkedIn, like I had a commitment when I first got into enablement that I was going to talk to two strangers a month. And I still do it. And I talk to way more than two. And
Mhm.
I see somebody who posts something on the enablement squad and I think that's really interesting. Hey, I'd love to talk more about that. Can you give me 15 minutes? When I got into enablement at first, I said, give me 15 minutes. I'll send you a Starbucks gift card. Nobody
Mhm.
took the gift card. Everybody gave me half an hour. Everybody. They just did. And I met people
Mm.
in that listening tour that I still talk to. I got my first job in enablement through that, where I talked to a guy, and 2 weeks later, he was like, "Hey, do you know this company called PandaDoc?" And I was like, "Panda what?" And I ended up being their first enablement leader, and it was an amazing start. So you just never know the seeds you plant. I'm a really big fan of this ABC, which is not always be closing, but always be connecting, which is a Jill
Mhm.
Rowley phrase. And so every time I would talk to people, I'd say, "Hey, who else should I talk to?" And now when I talk to people, I'd say, "Who else can I connect you with? How else can I help you grow this?" If you're looking at SDR enablement, you're like, I'm just really not great working with this segment. Great. Let me find somebody who knows SDR enablement, or go into the enablement squad Slack channel or SECs and start finding people. This is a very young profession. I mean, if you put a shout out on there like, "Hey, I need a competency framework," you'll get 12, and they're really good, and they're all very different. And so asking for that, even if you have a starting point, even if you have an idea, asking for that collaboration is really, really helpful. There's always a list SEC does, like enablers to follow or ones to watch. Follow
Mhm.
them, connect with
Mhm.
them, talk to them, start following them, and then see who are they posting about. This is how community is built, and um, it feels a little daunting until you've done it like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and then you're like, "Oh, this is easy. I'm literally
Mhm.
just talking to people, finding out
Yeah.
what they do, who they are, how they think, and then figuring out, like, how do I leverage that in building my own networks?"
Mhm. I really, really love this. And you can get on my podcast too if you have something to say. If you have great again ideas, this is another avenue. But serious note, this is my last question, and then we're gonna do some rapid fire questions if you're ready.
I love it.
So my previous guest, teamwork director of account management at Actable, he was on the show and he asked a question specifically to you. So, Gail, when you're talking about enablement, specifically sales enablement, when do you see the focus shifting from pre-sales to post-sales? And what are you going to be doing differently with your post-sales team to enable them for success in the next few years?
Oh, what a golden question. It's brilliant.
He was amazing. I would highly suggest watching that episode.
I
I
will.
actually added some change in my own work.
I love it. I love that question, especially because it's really been in the last 5 or 6 years, the companies have kind of had that light bulb moment as CAC, as the cost of acquisition of customers goes up and up and up, and quota attainment goes
Mhm.
down and down and down, historic lows and historic highs. The companies are saying, you know, we have this group of customers over here. Maybe they'll spend a little more with us. And all of a sudden, this idea of land and expand, wow, we got to do that. And so my answer is now the same as it's always been, which is we have to have a really good flywheel. We can't focus on sellers without understanding the buyer's journey post sale.
Mhm.
And we know in SaaS, traditional SaaS, 70% of the lifetime value of that customer comes post sale.
Mhm.
70%. That bow tie that my friend Jocko came up with, who I love to death, that bow tie is so important. And so
Mhm.
the sellers have to deeply understand the buyer journey post onboarding. What are they going to buy and why? And set that post team up for success. And the post team has to hear, hey, here are where customers are expanding. Hey, Miss Sales team, these are opportunities for you to make more on the front side, right? They
Mhm.
have to inform each other. It has to go back and forth. And so as we're doing that, we're looking at how are we reducing friction through onboarding to the post-sale phase. One of the biggest issues has is always, maybe will be, hopefully we can someday fix it, is the handoff. How do we make sure that customer feels like they have a smooth transition from you through onboarding to your account manager, to your customer success manager? And this again is where AI is going to make a huge difference, where you can take an AI summary of all of the interactions with that customer and make it automatically a handoff document. And that handoff document, if we're building it correctly with AI, is going to say, here's what they agreed to buy. Here's what they might buy in the future based on the buying signs we've given and the other customers like them. Here's how to incentivize them to grow in that way. So instead of relying just on the seller to feed us a great brief, we're leveraging the technology we're already using to create those handoff documents. And so as an account manager, when I'm taking over that account, I can say, I understand you've had these discussions. I don't have to have a lengthy download with Michael. I can see it all in the notes. I can then
Mhm.
summarize it for the new customer and get them feeling really comfortable that I'm now taking over. And as you know, even on a short sales cycle, that can be jarring. You've worked with a seller, you're accustomed to them, you're buying not just the product, you're buying the people. And now you're getting somebody new. But on a long sales cycle, it can break. We can break it. And so this is where we have to have AI empower those post sale sellers to have better insights, better information, and more action so that they can build customer confidence from day one.
Look, great breakdown. I really love it. Are you ready for rapid fire
Rapid
questions?
fire, let's go.
All right, let's go. Sales enablement leaders will be more effective if they only
Sales enablement leaders will be more effective if they only stop talking about the process and start talking about the outcomes.
love it. Okay. Instead of sell me this pen, sell me this.
Mm, outcome. Some of the outcome. Give me the vision on what it's going to look like when we do it right.
How your career impacted your personal development.
I don't know. That's a rapid fire answer. I think that I think getting into sales absolutely built my confidence. And I've said this my whole career. If you learn to sell, you will always have a job. And especially
Mhm.
for women, I think it is an amazing, amazing career builder. Whether you choose to sell, whether you choose to do something adjacent, whether you how you parent, how you show up in relationship, it's a confidence builder. And I am so grateful that I went kicking and screaming into a sales role because I didn't want to. My dad was a seller. My dad was a seller, and I thought, I'm never doing that. I fell into it, and it's a blessing. I have been very, very fortunate that I fell into selling.
Amazing. Last question. Our next guest is Kelly Wright, founder of Culture Driven Sales, former CRO at Tableau, former president and CEO at Gong. Do you have any questions for her?
No, another great question. I think I talk a lot about how enablement are kind of the quiet culture warriors. We work on SCO, we work on award programs, we work on recognition programs. And I think the biggest question I have is how can enablement be a better partner to leaders in that culture? Right now, we're in a weird job situation, right? People are job hugging.
Mhm.
And that's good and bad. Healthy turnover is healthy for a business. And
Yep.
so, if we are a more stagnant team, how can enablement be part of making sure that culture stays positive, that people are staying because they want to stay and they see a future and not because they're afraid to leave? I think building culture in a time of fear is very hard, and we have to communicate abundance even when we're lacking in abundance, but we don't want to move to fear.
You know what? I typically keep this for the end, but I think I'm gonna start that episode with this question because it's on point. Anyways, Gail, I really enjoyed this conversation, guys. I hope you gain a lot of value from this because if you didn't, then I don't know what else I can do on this podcast. But that's pretty much it. If someone wants to reach out, can they, and how?
Oh, absolutely. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want a resume review, tag me. If you just want to chit chat, tag me. Like I said, I love talking to strangers. I love being part of this community. And I love advocating for enablement. So if you're a CRO listening or a sales leader and you think,
Mhm.
I'm not getting enough output from my team, maybe I need to behave differently with my team, let's talk as well. Because I think for enablement, when we coach our CROs, when we coach our sales leaders, on how to get the most of us, we get better returns and they get better returns. Like we can't just be in the enablement bubble. We're part of that ecosystem.
Love that. All right, guys. Until next time. Bye.
Thank you.